What's going on, guys? Some of you may be unsubscribing today. I'm going to try and rank all 32 NHL teams for the upcoming 2021-2022 season. If I rank your team poorly, just know it's nothing personal. I'm going to do my best to rank these and obviously try and spread them apart evenly. We have cup contenders at the top. These are teams I think are going to want a deep playoff run. Below them are playoff teams. Basically, these are teams, if they don't make the playoffs, I'll be quite surprised. Bubble teams below that, basically it's a 50-50. I wouldn't be shocked if they make it, nor would I be shocked if they don't make it. Rebuilding teams, so these are teams that are, getting better, but still not quite, ready to make that next jump. If they make the playoffs, I'd be quite surprised. And finally, teams that are tanking. There's only, 2 or 3 teams in my mind that'll go here. Basically, these are teams I don't think are getting better. I think they're getting worse, and they basically have absolutely no chance of making the playoffs. So, getting started here, guys, we're going to go alphabetically. We have the Anaheim Ducks. I'm actually going to show you guys each team's roster, just to give you guys a reminder of what they look like heading into this season. So, the Anaheim Ducks here, forward group isn't that great. A lot of young players, but Comtois, Zegras, and Terry really isn't a first line. Getzlaf, Henrique are getting older. Defensively, they're actually solid, I think, when healthy. Lindholm, Manson, Drysdale, Fowler's solid top 4. Larson and Shattenkirk, not too bad. Goalies, I still think John Gibson's a really good goalie. So until they trade away John Gibson, I don't think they're tanking, in which case I would say they're rebuilding, but they're definitely kind of on the edge. Like if they trade away John Gibson or say Hampus Lindholm, someone like that, they probably go into the tanking category for me. Next to the Arizona Coyotes. So I think I mentioned this in the Dvorak trade video. Arizona might have the worst roster in the league, and that's saying something when you look at Buffalo. You know what? I take that back. Buffalo's probably still worse, but Arizona is pretty terrible. They trade away pretty much all their good players. They have a first line there, Keller, Schmaltz, Kessel. After that, that second line is an okay third line. Their bottom 6 is pretty rough. Defensively, they have Jacob Chikrin, and then that's about it. Gostisbehere is not bad offensively. Soderstrom and Timmins are young. Goalies are terrible, Hutton and Coroner. So, yeah, Arizona clearly tanking. Like I said, they have a first line, then they have Jacob Chikrin, and that's literally it. The Boston Bruins there. So the Boston Bruins, I think, are a solid team, especially with the additions they made this offseason. Obviously, David Krejci retired. Tuukka Rask looking like he's going to retire. He's basically said he was coming back, though. He's going to go to Boston and very cheap. So if they could add Tuukka Rask for literally $1 million with Ullmark, their goalie tandem's insane. But right now, it's Ullmark and Swayman. Defensively, Grzelcyk, McAvoy, Carlo Forbert, Riley, Clifton is not bad. McAvoy's really good. Hall, Coyle, Smith's not bad. Second line, Hall, DeBrusk, Foligno. They're a good team. They still have that first line. For me, they're not a cup contender, but they definitely are a playoff team. If they don't make it, I'll be quite surprised. Now, the Carolina Hurricanes, another team, that's had a pretty busy offseason. I just know somehow Calgary and Buffalo got put at the end of the line, so we'll fix that after. Carolina here. So, Svech, Aho, Teravainen, sick first line. Top 6, Niederreiter, Trocheck, Nietzsche, Kokiniemi's on the team now. They got good forward depth defensively. Losing Hamilton was a big hit. They also lost Jake Bean, Hayden Fleury. I think Gardner's out for the year. Still, though, their top 6D isn't that bad. Anderson, I don't think it's that bad of a goalie. Same with Ranta. I think for Ranta, it's health concerns. For Anderson, it's consistency. I would say if Carolina doesn't make the playoffs, I'm going to be surprised. Basically, it's just they have a very tough Metropolitan division. We've got to go back here now alphabetically. So, Buffalo is up next. I just mentioned them with Arizona. They probably, without a doubt, have the worst roster in the NHL. Skinner, Middlestat, and Olofsson is a tough first line. We're assuming Eichel either gets traded or doesn't play for them this season. Thompson, Cousins, and Bjork. The bottom 6 is looking very rough. Defensively, kind of like Arizona, they have Dahlin. Not a lot else. Yoki Haruju and Butcher aren't too bad. Same with Miller, but not a lot there. Goaltending-wise, they have a 40-year-old Craig Anderson. He's something like that. Aaron Dell backing him up. Yeah, Buffalo Sabres, Arizona Coyotes, like 2015. It's literally the exact same situation. They're both tanking, trying to see who can finish worse. Have the best chance of drafting Shane Wright, and probably, honestly, Connor Bedard and Michkov the year after that. We'll see if somehow Edmonton missed the playoffs this year and passes both of them to get right. Now, the Calgary Flames here, they're a team that's kind of in no man's land. You know what I mean? Goudreau, Lindholm, Kachuk, solid first line. You got Coleman there, Backlund, Mangiapane. They have Monahan as a third line center. I feel like he'll probably pass Backlund on that second line. Fourth line's okay. Hanifin, Tanev, Anderson, Zadarow's not a bad top 4. Obviously, losing Jared Downs is a big hit for them. Markstrom a solid starting goalie, though. So for me, I don't think they're for sure a playoff team. In my mind, they have a 50-50 shot of both making the playoffs or missing. Now, Chicago Blackhawks are up next here. Obviously, made that huge trade and signing of Seth Jones. DeBrincat, they got Doc as the first line center for next season. Kane, Strom, Taves, Kubalik, the bottom 6. They got Tyler Johnson. That's about it. DeHaan there with Jones, Murphy, McCabe, Caleb Jones, and Kalanick. I don't even know this guy, I'm not going to lie. I feel like they got to pair up the Jones brothers at least once. So, I don't know, defensively, yeah. Fleury's in net, though. He is playing for them. He's a good goalie. Wow, the Chicago one is so tough. They're either a bubble team or they're a rebuilding team. I don't like their bottom six at all. Defense, like they have a couple of guys. It's between bubble team and rebuilding team for me, the Blackhawks. They did add Seth Jones. I think Marc-Andre Fleury is a big thing. You get that goalie. Plus, Taze is back from injury. Doc was injured for a bit. This is tough. I'm going to put them bubble, but it's like a low-end bubble. They have a lot of work to do. But like I mentioned, adding Jones, Fleury, Taze, and Doc being healthy, they probably have an okay chance of making the playoffs. Card Avalanche here. This one should be obvious, but they're still stacked, even after losing Grubauer. They kept Landeskog, so that first line, I think, is the best line in hockey. It's either their line or the Boston line of Marchand, Bergeron, Pastrnak. They got Comfort there on the second line with Kadri Burakovsky. I would give Newhook a chance. Joss there, Nichushkin. Helms, our fourth line center. I totally forgot about that. Taze, McCarr, Johnson, Girard's a very solid top four. Byron Murray, even on the bottom pair. Like, that's potentially the best defense in the NHL. It's up there for sure. Like, that D is so solid, especially if Murray stays healthy and Byram takes the next steps in becoming an NHL defenseman. It's a scary defense. And then Kemper, of course, they have as a starter. Is he as good as Grubauer? Maybe. I'd say they're pretty similar. So, no reason Colorado shouldn't be a powerhouse again. In my mind, they are cup contenders. If they don't at least make, the second round, if not the conference final, I'm going to be shocked. And I'm pretty sure right now the Vegas odds have them as the cup favorite. Columbus Blue Jackets up next. They're a team, they're definitely rebuilding. I mean, they have Laine and Roslovic. So the two guys they got from the Dubois trade are on that first line. Bjorkstrand. The Voracek trade, I think it's a good trade for them, honestly. I would put him with Laine, though. A really good playmaker with a really good sniper. Domi Nyquist there. Jenner, Tex-J, Foodie. Really, like, their forward group, it's not bad. They just don't have a lot of stars. They need Laine really to step up, honestly. Rowensky is going to be carrying this defense. A lot of young, unproven guys. Boquist, Jake Bean, Kukin. Gavrikov is not a bad defensive defenseman. Brzlinkin, Korpisalo, I think it's a solid tandem. But for me, Columbus, they just don't have enough pieces. I would say they're definitely rebuilding. They're getting a lot younger. Dallas Stars are up next. Dallas Stars are an interesting team. Obviously, cup finally a couple years ago. Hintz, Pavelski, Robertson. Pavelski coming off a career year at an old age, so it's weird to see that. Radulov, Sagan back, healthy, Ben. It's a solid top six. Robertson as well. Calder finalist last year. He had a career year. Kervanta there, Faxler, Gurianov, Como, Glendenny, and Raffle. Like, not a bad forward group. Suter, Heiskanen. I think, Suter got bought out, but he wasn't a bad defenseman. He just had a bad contract. So, that top four with Klingberg, Lindell, it looks good to me. They got Andre Kudobin in net. It's a pretty solid tandem. If Bishop comes back, they're laughing. They got three goalies to choose from. For me, they're at least bubble, if not playoff. I really think, looking at that lineup, if they're healthy, I feel like Dallas Stars should be a playoff team. Detroit Red Wings next here, so my favorite team. We got Bertuzzi, Larkin, Verana on our first line, which isn't too bad. Zadina, Suter, and Fabry on the second. I really think they should actually put Zadina on the first line with Larkin, Verana, give him some ice time. Hopefully, he can make those next strides. And then Bertuzzi, Fabry, Suter actually all play together on the Guelph Storm. It would be cool to see them reunited. Domestikov, Rasmussen, Gagne. Fourth line's okay. DeKaiser, Hronik, Sider, Leddy, Stahl, Stetcher. Our defense, could be better. Sider, a lot of people think could win the Calder this year. Even Lucas Raymond, if he actually cracks the NHL lineup. Goaltending-wise, Nedeljkovic literally was Calder nominee last year with Grice. We're still a rebuilding team. We're still a young team, but we should be better. We're definitely no longer tanking. So next, you guys are the Florida Panthers, who I think probably made the best trade this offseason, getting Sam Reinhart for a first-round pick and Devin Levi. You can see they got him on the first line right now with Barkov, Verhaeg, Huberdeau, Bennett, Duclair. Solid top six. If Lundell makes the lineup, just gives them even more forward depth. Uyghur, Ekblad, a solid top D pair. The rest of the defense is okay. Spencer Knight looked like a legit NHL goaltender last year. He's very young. He's only got 10 total games played, including the playoffs. Bobrovsky, if he's in a tandem, if he can bounce back a bit, Panthers should be good. Now, I think the big question is whether or not last year was a fluke, but I don't know. They looked so dominant. I don't think so. I'm going to be surprised if they're not back in the playoffs again next season. The Edmonton Oilers are up next. McDavid, Draisaitl usually makes you a playoff team. Hyman there on that top line with Puljujarvi. Yamamoto, Draisaitl, Nuge was such a great second line for them. So if they can, find that chemistry again. Fogle, of course, they got for Ethan Bear. They got Ryan McLeod slotted in as third line center. I think Tyler Benson can maybe make this team. Definitely a different looking defense. Nurse, Barry, CC Keith, Russell, and Bouchard. Who knows if Broberg can push in. The defense definitely a question mark, and then goaltending as well. Smith and Koskinen, another question mark. But with McDavid and Draisaitl obviously finishing 1 and 2 in league scoring, it's tough not to see the Oilers making the playoffs, especially with a pretty weak Pacific Division. So next year, guys, with the LA Kings, I just realized Edmonton should have been before Florida. I'm not sure, who did this, but their alphabet was definitely off. So LA Kings here. I have fellow Kopitar Arvidsson. I definitely like the trade they made adding Arvidsson. Browns getting older. Deneau, decent signing. Kempe. Moore, Byfield should make it. Athanasiou, Velarde, Lizotte, Anderson, Dolan. They got some young players. On defense, they got an older Edler. They got Doughty. Some pretty average guys. Cal Pearson's not bad. Quick's getting older. For me, LA is definitely still rebuilding. You can see a lot of young pieces there. A lot of guys aging. A lot of unproven players. So, don't really think anyone's going to argue with that. Now, the Minnesota Wild are up next. They're an interesting team for sure. We have to assume Kaprizov is back, even though he hasn't signed the contract yet. So, Greenway, Eriksson, Ek, Foligno. It's not done a good first line, honestly. I feel like Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Fiala are better options for that first line wing. You got Hartman, Boldy. Let's see, Dumba, Brodin, Goligoski, Spurgeon. In net, of course, Talbot, Kakinen. Talbot's not really a legit starter for me. Kakinen's still young. I personally see Minnesota as a bubble team. I feel like a lot of players on their team are kind of exceeding expectations last season, so I assume they're going to come back down to earth a little bit. I guess we'll have to wait and see. The Montreal Canadiens are up next. Obviously, Stanley Cup finalists this year, lost to Tampa Bay Lightning. Just lost Kotkaniemi, but they brought in Dvorak. That top 6 isn't that bad. I don't like Jake Evans as a third-line center. I feel like you could get somebody a bit better, but Hoffman and Anderson are pretty decent third-line wingers. Losing Shea Weber is a big blow for them. Petr Edmondson, Savard, Romanov, Sherratt, Weidman. Price, hopefully will be healthy for the start of the season. If not, they'll have Allen, who's not bad, and Price will be back and not too long. Still, though, they made a Stanley Cup final. I don't see them as a for sure playoff team. For me, they're a bubble team. And I don't think that's that crazy of a take, seeing as they were actually the worst team to make the playoffs last season. They then just followed that up with a crazy playoff run. So, again, they're a bubble team for me. Nashville Predators. Wow. So this is another one. Trade away a lot of pieces. Johansson, Duchesne, 2 expensive centers there, 1-2. Forsberg and Tolvanen they have on the first line. Kunin, Granlund, Cody Glass they have making the team, of course. Traded Nolan Patrick through the Flyers for him. Losing Ryan Ellis, Tomasino they have making the team as well. Myers on the top pair with Yossi, Carrier, Ekholm, Berwicky, Fabro. Fabro's a good young defenseman. Saros is a very good goalie. Thing is, if he didn't play absolutely amazing in that last month or so of the season, the Predators did not make the playoffs. They've lost Ryan Ellis. They lost Yarncroc. There's a lot of young players here. I was almost tempted to put them in rebuilding, but they still have Yossi and Ekholm. They still have a good goalie in Saros. I guess they're a bubble team. If they make it in, it wouldn't be that crazy to me. The rebuilding teams would be crazy to me if they make it in. So next up are the New Jersey Devils. They've obviously made some nice moves this offseason. A couple Russians on Jack Hughes' wings there. Kukunin and Sharangovich. Actually, I need to correct that. Sharangovich I saw was from Belarus. Brat, Hischier, Tatar, Woodzak, and McLeod. They have decent depth on forward. It's just like the superstar power. They need Hischier and Hughes to prove why they were first overall picks. And even then, it's just a lot of, kind of like the Ducks, a lot of decent but not great players. Graves and Hamilton, so literally the top D pair is brand new for them. Severson, Smith, Siegenthaler, Subban. Definitely better defense. Blackwood's a good young goalie. Still, though, for me, they added Hamilton. It's tough. I would say they're still rebuilding. They're just further along now. They're a better team than they were last year, but I still don't really see them making the playoffs, especially with such a tough Metropolitan division. If you think about it, they have to at least get 5th in that division as a wildcard team. I see the Pittsburgh Penguins, Washington Capitals, Rangers, Islanders, and Hurricanes is all better than them. They're going to have a very tough time making the playoffs this season. Speaking of the 2 New York teams, we've got the Islanders up next. Obviously, went to the conference final last 2 years in a row, lost both times to the Lightning. Lee is back, Barzell, Palmieri, they lost Eberle, but they kept Palmieri from the deadline. Bailey, Nelson, Beauvillier, it's a decent top 6. Panic from Detroit. Wallstrom hopefully getting more ice time, playing better. Best 4th line in the NHL. Pellick, Pollock, Dobson, Green, Aho, and Mayfield. Their defense definitely got a little bit worse in losing Nick Leddy. Goaltending, though, I think Varlamov and Sorokin's a very solid tandem. So for me, the Islanders should be a playoff team again. We'll be kind of surprised if they don't make it. And next year, the New York Rangers. So Zibanejad there. He's got the 2 young guys. Lafreniere, Kakko on his wings. Krasov with Strome, Panarin. Interesting. Gaudreau, a big signing they made. Hittle, Kreider, Blyce on the 4th line. I feel like you can't trade Buchnevich for Blyce and then throw him on the 4th line. Lindgren, Fox, the Norris Trophy winner, Trouba, Miller, Nemeth, Lundqvist. I mean, Shashurkin and net. I don't know. Are Rangers guaranteed a playoff spot? I mean, Panarin hopefully plays the full season. I'm looking at it. They do have Fox, but after that, a lot of young guys I don't really know about. I'm going to put the Rangers in bubble team again just because I'm not, confident on them for sure making the playoffs. And next year, guys, with the Ottawa Senators, they got to be one of the youngest teams in the league. Kachuk, Norris, Batherson, Brown, Pinto, Stützle, like that entire top six is under 25, I think, aside from Connor Brown. Probably under 23 aside from Connor Brown. Bottom six there's okay. Shabbat, Zaitsev. The defense could use some work. Branchard needs to definitely take some strides. Murray needs to bounce back from next season. So they're still a rebuilding team for me, for sure. But, they could be a powerhouse, I'd say, in a few years. Now, the Philadelphia Flyers are up next year. I think they got a really solid top six there. Giroux, Couturier, Konechny, Acton, Hayes, Farabee. Even the third line there with JVR. Defensively, that trade for Ryan Ellis I thought was awesome for them. Trade for Ristolainen I didn't think was quite as good. Keith Yandle's a good guy for the power play. Provorov, Sanheim. Braun they brought in as well, I think. Solid defensive defenseman. Carter Hart, you gotta think, can't play as bad as he did last year. Jones, I think will be fine as a backup. So I think, for me, Flyers should be a playoff team. Like, looking at that roster, it's a playoff roster. If they don't make the playoffs, I'd be quite surprised. We got the rivals up next here, the Pittsburgh Penguins. If you got Crosby and Malkin still as your 1-2, you're a playoff team in my eyes. Gensel, Zucker, Russ, Kapanen. Bomb six there with Carter, who actually looked pretty good for them in the playoffs. The defense thinks basically the exact same as last year, but Freeman, I guess, to the CC. Jerry and Smith, they got to play better, especially Tristan Jerry, but they still made the playoffs last year, even with Jerry playing bad. So for me, they're a playoff team as well. Next up here, guys, we have the San Jose Sharks. So their team, I don't know what's going on with Evander Kane. I don't know if he's playing for them next year, so he's a wild card. Other than that, like, Barbanov's really not a top 6 forward for me. Hurdle might also be traded. The bottom six there is rough. Aging, Burns, and Carlson, they're still good. Same with Vlasic, but these guys aren't getting younger. Ferraro's not bad. The rest are okay. Goalies, Aiden Hill. They traded a second-round pick for a guy who was a third string in Arizona behind Kemper and Ranta. Reimer's backing him up. I mean, they're okay goalies. For me, though, clearly rebuilding. And if they lose Kane and Hurdle, whether, just Kane, they cancel his contract, whatever, and they trade away Hurdle, at that point, for me, they're a team that's tanking. But paying all that money to Carlson, Burns, Edward Vlasic, I feel like they're not tanking. They're definitely rebuilding. They're probably hoping they make the playoffs, but they're just not good enough to be a bubble team for me. Now, the Seattle Kraken are up next. Expansion team, first season of the NHL. Interesting team for sure. You got Schwartz, Gord, Eberle, Donskoy, McCann, Yarn, Krok. It's not too bad. Like Tanev, Wenberg, Appleton, Riley Sheehan, Morgan Geeky, Colin Blackwell. Obviously, their bottom six, I'd say, is better than the top six because they pretty much had their pick of bottom six forwards, but top six, a lot tougher to get those guys. Defensively, Don Larson, Alexiak, Giordano, Susie, Fleury. Like, it's a pretty good defense. Grubauer's their starter. Drieger backing him up. Honestly, I think this team is pretty solid. Wenberg looked good last year on Florida. He's got to keep that up for sure. They have other guys, I think, not shown here, too, that could make the team. Beniers, though, I'm pretty sure is going back to Michigan. So, for me, the Kraken, I don't think they're a for sure playoff team, but they're definitely a bubble team. Like, I don't expect them to be tanking at all. They're better than, I think, every single California team. So, yeah, not a playoff block for me, but definitely like a 50-50. St. Louis Blues are up next. What is it, 3 years now removed from winning that Stanley Cup. Sanford, O'Reilly, Perron. Sanford on the first line is interesting. They're bringing Saad there to replace Hoffman, Shen, and Buchnevich. Again, I think that was a great trade for them. Kyrie, Thomas, Costin. They got Krug, Falk, Parayko, Scandella. Bennington, I think, still a solid goalie. So for me, the Blues are a playoff team. If they're not in the playoffs, I'm going to be surprised for sure. Tampa Bay obviously lost a lot of pieces this summer. If you guys don't realize, Yanni Gord, Blake Coleman, Barclay Goodrow, Tyler Johnson. I'm pretty sure they lost somebody on defense. Like, they lost some guys, but the top six, I feel like Cirelli's in a top six, not Bray-Boulet, would still be really solid. Colton, Bray-Boulet, Joseph. They added Corey Perry, Maroon's still there. Hedman, Ruda, Chernik, McDonough, Sergeyev, Foote. Actually, their defense is the exact same. I take that back. They didn't lose anyone on D. They still have probably the best goal in the league in Vasilevsky. Really, it's just their bottom six, I think, that took a hit. So, if those guys can make some strides, just play decent enough, they're another Stanley Cup contender for me. I could honestly see them three-peating, and I wouldn't even be that surprised. Now, the Toronto Maple Leafs here haven't found their way to the first round yet. When you look at their roster, they really should be playing better than they are. Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander. I mean, their bottom six isn't too bad with Spezza, Simmons, Kasha as well. If he can stay healthy, could push into the top six for sure. He could play first line instead of Nick Ritchie. Who also they got for cheap. Kerfoot there. Riley, Brody, Hole, Muzzin, the solid top 4 defense. Sandin and Dermott or Young can get better. Jack Campbell, Mrazek, solid tandem. I feel like, Mrazek looked good in Carolina. Campbell obviously played great for Toronto last year. For sure they're a playoff team. And honestly, looking at their roster, Toronto should be a Stanley Cup contender. Like, they should be, making it deep in the playoffs. I think every year they're out in the first round. It's a shock to me. So, because of that, I'm not another Cup contender because every year, it's not just playoffs. Like, I expect them to make a deep run, and just for one reason or another, they can never do it. Up next, another Canadian team here in the Vancouver Canucks. They're pretty busy. So, assuming Peterson, Hughes contracts get done, solid top 6 there, I think, for sure. Bringing in Connor Garland. Bottom 6 as well. Pearson, Dickinson they got for like nothing, but Cole's in if he makes the team. Defensively there, Hughes, Hamnick, Meyer, Ekman, Larson. Rathbone's a solid young defenseman. Pullman. Demko looked really good last year. Halak backing him up. For me, I guess, it would just be like a depth issue. I think Lashley played absolutely terrible. Now, would I say I think they're guaranteed a playoff spot? Probably not in the Pacific. I'd rank them literally identical to Seattle and Calgary, both in their division. I think all 3 of those teams, 50-50 chance to get in or not get in. Really, in the Pacific, the only team that I know for sure is making the playoffs is this next team, the Vegas Golden Knights. And then after them, I see Edmonton as the second best team simply because they have McDavid and Draisaitl. And after that, it's really, anyone's guess in the Pacific. So Vegas, because, I think they're going to win the Pacific Division, easy first round matchup. They should be going on another deep playoff run. Vegas is stacked throughout. I guess this one you guys can see it before I show you the roster. Now, Chandler Stevenson as the first line center is still an interesting one, but Pacioretty and Stone are good wingers. That second line they've had since their inception is awesome. Nolan Patrick has a chance to play well. The Dadonov ad I liked a lot. That top 4D, Martinez, Pietrangelo, Theodore McNabb. Keeping Martinez was big for them. Hagen Whitecloud, solid young defenseman. They lose Fleury, but Leonard I think's pretty much just as good. Of course, they needed that Fleury money to bring in guys like Dadonov, keep Martinez. So, looks pretty good if they somehow make some crazy trade and bring in Jack Eichel. They can't go up from where they already are, but good for them if they do. So next here, guys, we have the Washington Capitals. Now their team, Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, Wilson, Oshie, Backstrom, Mantha. It's a solid top 6. Bottom 6 isn't too bad either. Looking at their defense there, they're led by Carlson, who's solid, Orlov, too. Goaltending-wise, Samsonov's a decent young goalie. Vanacek, they got back from Seattle for a second after they took him away, so I wonder if Vanacek potentially even, push in for that starting role. They're another team who, again, I expect them to be in the playoffs. And finally here, guys, the Winnipeg Jets. I'll put them there first. I expect them to be a playoff team as well. In that Central Division, I think they're probably, the second or third best team. That top 6 is just so stacked. Connor Scheifele, Wheeler, Ehlers, Stas, and Dubois. Even the bottom 6 there looks pretty good. Defensively, I think they shorted up a lot, too. Nate Schmidt, Brennan Dillon, that was their biggest need. They added to it. Logan Stanley is young, getting better. They got Connor Hellebuyck in net, who honestly might be the second best goal in the league in my mind, behind Vasilevsky. So with him, better defense, sick top 6, they should be a playoff team. So there you guys have it. You can see, obviously, most of the teams are in the middle. Probably no crazy surprises here. I'm, doing my best guess. Those 4 teams, I guess, I see Tampa, Toronto, and then Colorado, Vegas as the conference finalists. Arizona, Buffalo. Again, I could see either one of those teams setting a record for worst season in the NHL. And then the rest of these teams, I think makes sense. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. Let me know in the comment section any changes you think I got way wrong. As always, guys, if you did enjoy it, leave a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the sub button. Thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.